Hello and welcome to the Unknown Film Enthusiasts. As we are rounding out the year of 2017, we want to take this time to look back on our most favorite films of this year. The way that this is going to run is we're all going to go through our top 5 films, beginning with number 5 and counting up till 1. We'll each say what our number 5s are, have a brief discussion about them, and then go to number 4, 3, 2, and finally 1. So, just so to remind us of who we are, my name is Zach.
I'm Nick.
And I'm Dan.
All right. So we're going to begin, at least on the couch, from right to left here, with Nick beginning.
So, little on me.
All right. So our number 5 film of the year.
Wait, is this a couch or...
It's a couch.
We had this discussion before. I think we should clarify that
All right.
for the audience.
It's a futon because
What
we're
defines
rich
a couch?
millennials. It's a transformer.
It's a couch bed.
All right, so we're going to begin with number 5. We're each going to say the title of the film, and then we're going to each say the title of the film, and then come back just to give a brief discussion about it after we've all said the title of our number 5 film.
So my number 5 was Lady Bird.
Oh, very nice. Mine was going to be Baby Driver.
Mine was supposed to be Blade Runner, but because I still have not seen the first one, I'm going with The Disaster Artist for my 5th.
All right, very good. Interesting. So, want to talk a little bit about Lady Bird and why you liked it?
Lady Bird is not something I'd probably generally see. It's a coming-of-age movie about a 17-year-old in California who really wants to go east where culture is. But basically, it's a period piece. It's set in early 2000s, right after 9/11. And basically, they go into that, how just basically her difficult relationship with her parents, just wanting to be different, wanting to be artsy. And there's a lot of emotional notes just going through there, and just the relationships felt so real, and you could tell that the movie was from Greta Gerwig, the director, is a comedian and a writer, and you could tell that this was just her putting her heart out.
Like passion project.
Yeah, and it was hilarious at points. It was really touching. I saw it with my mom. And at the end of the movie, we both just smiled and looked at each other. And it was a special occasion. My mom only goes to the movies like once every 5 years. This year she saw 2. She saw Lego Batman and Lady Bird. So that's glowing reviews for both. So yeah, that's Lady Bird.
Very nice. And similar with Baby Driver, just I feel like another passion project, a little bit of a different variety, but the same idea. Going to see this film, it's one of those feel good in the sense that it is a joyous thing to watch, what is essentially a music video that is of a heist, where everything is so intentional and planned throughout the entire film. It is just something that I've literally had on the background, just listening to the music and taking a quick glance to look at something incredible happen with a nice, cute little love story tied in there. It's very positive and good film to have there, so that's why it's my number 5 for this year.
My 5th pick is The Disaster Artist. I chose this movie for my 5th spot as a filmmaker and a content creator because the actors in the film are playing real people who wanted to create a movie, and they wanted to so badly that they were willing... Well, Tommy Wiseau was willing to spend $6 million to make a terrible movie, but it wasn't that terrible in the end, because it made people laugh, and they enjoyed it. Bringing us to The Disaster Artist, featuring the Franco brothers, who did a fantastic job playing these characters and these roles to kind of retell the story and how that movie was made. And I liked it just because the amount of effort, the attention to detail, the side-by-side shots shown at the end, I think that was just incredible. And I chose this movie out of a high respect for it, for my 5th spot.
All right, so very nice. Let's move on to our number 4 picks for this year.
My number 4 was The Big Sick.
Kamal Nanjiani.
Oh yes, Kamal, our dear friend.
Friend of the show. Any major... Oh, sorry, that's right. And my number 4 was Logan, the comic book movie, not Logan Lucky, but
How dare
Logan.
you.
I know, sorry. Go ahead.
And I went with this year's Star Wars, Last Jedi.
Just going back over The Big Sick, I feel like another similar thing. It was someone telling their real life story of how they started dating someone, they fell apart, and distanced because of their cultures. One was a Pakistani man, and the other was your average white girl living in New York City. And basically, she goes into a coma, and he's the one who takes her into the hospital. And throughout the course of her being in a coma, becomes closer to her and her family. And it's almost heartbreaking because she's dying, falling apart, and he's watching her every second, but the whole time she doesn't know anything that he's doing for her. And while this sounds really dour, and depressing, it's also probably the funniest movie I've seen all year. And written by comedians, starring comedians, Kumail Nanjiani, Bo Burnham. I can't remember the girl's name from Saturday Night Live, the slightly heavy-set one. But she's absolutely wonderful in this movie. Ray Romano is hilarious. He is the funniest part, and yeah, it's just culmination of pure emotion, and it's so touching, funny, and just it's a feel-good movie in the oddest of senses, but it's just fantastic.
That's nice. In kind of a similar but different way for Logan, the amount of emotion I felt coming out of this film about a man with an adamantium skeleton and claws was just, again, ridiculous thing when you say it like that, but the power of the death of a legend and the birth of something new, and the way it dealt with how you look at the past and how people tend to turn the past into this fanciful, idyllic, or heroic sense, and then looking at the actual people that were there that were part of it, that were making the history, was very powerful. And just also in terms of like the acting and power that came through Professor X and Logan, and seeing their interactions escorting this little girl to a safe haven, was just, their dynamic and everything was so satisfying to sending these heroes off in the most appropriate way. And that emotional side of just seeing this chapter in their story was extremely impactful, and is why it's number 4 on my list.
Very good. I chose episode 8 because I went to the theater and I sat down there, and throughout the entire duration of the film, I felt very glued to the screen, and had my questions throughout it. And I know there was a lot of controversies surrounding this Star Wars film, but I can say at the end, while leaving it, I was like, this was a good Star Wars movie. Like, it was a Star Wars movie, and I liked it. Things that stood out to me, I liked the conflict between Rey and Ben. It's similar to other tensions in the other Star Wars movies, as we've seen with, Anakin, really fighting the dark side and kind of not really knowing which way he's going to go, not really knowing what these characters are going to do as well in this movie. It was good. I enjoyed it.
All right, so our number 3 picks for this year?
I'm going to have to go with, and a very appropriate spot on the list, my number 3 is 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri.
Very nice. My number 3 is War for the Planet of the Apes.
And my number 3 is The Shape of Water.
All right, just a brief little thing about 3 Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri. I love Martin McDonagh. I loved In Bruges. I think it's a near perfect movie. Seven Psychopaths is very fun. He's just a good writer, and he knows how to write tragedy and comedy together. You'll notice a trend in the movies I really like. And it's heartbreaking, it's hilarious, and it's just phenomenal. And some of the best performances out of Frances McDormand, Woody Harrelson, just a whole slew of actors that you've never seen do anything like this. And basically the story revolves around a little girl was raped, killed, and burned. And there's a woman in town who feels the police are not doing what they should be, so she puts up these billboards basically saying, 7 months, no arrests, why have you done this, police commissioner, don't you think you should see who's responsible for the rape of my daughter? Mm-hmm. And she puts these up to stir controversy, to have questions be asked, and just seeing that dynamic throughout the town, how people react, how the police feel like they're being targeted when in reality she's really the one with the issues, and just the redemption stories within there are just fantastic. And yeah, star-studded cast. Peter Dinklage is in it, and he's hilarious, and it's just so masterfully made. And it's amazing that he drove through this town of Ebbing, Missouri, and he thought, oh, this is a good idea for a movie. And it's just amazing the small spark of an idea can create something so beautiful. So, yep, that's my number 3.
That's very powerful. My number 3, War for the Planet of the Apes. I feel like I'm starting to develop a theme of what I enjoyed this year, but again, what it means to be an epic is something that is very difficult to kind of portray in films, because when you think about epics, you think more about maybe are more akin to literature. But War for the Planet of the Apes is very much an epic. The death, and really the death of Caesar, it and the legend that it produces, and that we know it will produce if we're in the same universe here, kind of thing. But whatever. I know it's not exactly correct, but
Planet of the Apes has never been known for their clear timelines.
That's fair. But just having such such forces battling against one another for their own reasons, for survival of the fittest, and of course these two factions going at one another provide that epic war that so many of these classical epics discuss, and it always focuses around the two main names being Caesar and Woody Harrelson's character. Now I can't remember his name, so
The Colonel.
But even in the fact that he is known as the Colonel means something to the legend that is produced from this film, and walking away from it knowing about this epic battle and just the epic, the avalanche coming in and wiping out this force for a new dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Damn it! But it is extremely powerful and impactful, and again, I think I'm getting into my theme for this is definitely this idea of epic and meaningful story and narrative of what it means to be human, even though that these are apes creating their own history. So that's why it's my number 3.
I chose The Shape of Water for my 3rd spot, and it was a film that I actually saw today, and I think that helps with putting it on why I chose to put it at such a high spot on my list. I really I enjoyed this film because it told a love story kind of in a new way, and it brought a lot of attention to why love is meaningful and different, and for many people it means something different that you might not understand. And the truth is even in the title, like The Shape of Water, meaning the shape of love. It's does not have a shape. It is, you cannot define it. It is what it is to you, and that's what makes it special. I enjoy the fact that this film takes you back in time, kind of brings you back to the 50s. I don't know. We just talked about it for 20 minutes, so
Refer to our own review
Yeah,
of The Shape of Water.
It's kind of hard to continue on more about it, but I really enjoyed that one.
All right, so our number 2 picks.
Number 2, I have the phenomenal Blade Runner 2049.
Very nice. For number 2, where are we going? Dunkirk.
Oddly enough, I chose Dunkirk for my number 2 as well.
Very nice.
Perhaps you two could have a nice conversation as to why you put it so high.
Yes.
You can start with Blade Runner, and then we'll get into Dunkirk.
Okay. So yeah, Blade Runner. If you've seen our video about Blade Runner, you'll know how big of a fan I am, just of general sci-fi and specifically Blade Runner. And it's one of those movies. It's long, it's full of content, but not a second feels wasted. Every visual is there for a purpose. Every character has such a beautiful arc, and just the visuals mixed with the story, mixed with having a sequel 35 years later that's almost 3 hours long, with original cast that doesn't even show up more than halfway through the movie, and just the fact that everything can come together and tell this epic story from such a small scale is what amazes me so much. And just it subverting all expectations, where half of the movie I thought that Agent K or Officer K was going to be this chosen one, and then it turns out that sometimes you're not the main character in your own story, and it's just every single part of it blew me away from start to finish. And if anyone's looking to shop for The Unknown Film Enthusiast, I believe it's out on digital today, December 26th. So, yeah, that's my number 2.
So, Dunkirk. As a social studies and history person, oh well, of course you like war films, but that's generally not the case for me. Dunkirk, however, the story behind Dunkirk and the way it was definitely advertised as such is it is civilians coming to the rescue of the army. And the way it was portrayed, the fact that I was on the edge of my seat because of like this constant ticking that was always present because time was running out. The Germans are coming. You're about to get absolutely obliterated on this beach, and that story being told, and it was, I mean, it was a tight movie. How long was it again? It was
only like an hour and 42 minutes.
Yeah.
It was Christopher Nolan's basically his shortest movie since he started making feature-length films.
That was knowing him, where he could have gone on for probably hours. And that's what's so great about it is he knew it. If we're gonna tell this story right, you have to have people anticipating what's gonna happen next, and just even the fact that the sound was so well developed and you're just so present with the characters throughout the entire thing. That was the big thing for me, is the attachment that you felt with these characters, and then the heroism behind the story itself, where a rescue does take place. And I don't know, you want to add anything to that? You want to negate anything?
Growing up, I watched a lot of war films with my father, and fortunately enough, I was able to visit him, and he's a few states away, but I actually was able to see this film with him this year. And I remember sitting in the theater, just like you said, on the edge of your seat, due to the pacing of this film, this quick kind of, this tempo that is very consistent, created or called for an immense buildup of events that unfolded, leading to, the saving of the army. But this was a very dark and gritty war film, and the presence that it held was intense because it made you feel as if you were there, in with, with your fellow military comrades.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I thought was, the first 15 minutes of Saving Private Ryan, there's a reason that they show that still to this day in social studies classes, because you want something impactful. You want students to understand the horror of war, and they sign a permission slip so that they can see a rated R film in class. You show them Saving Private Ryan. Will this ever be shown in schools in its entirety? No, but it's something that I can definitely see being shown for educational purposes because it is such a powerful story. And then it does, in many ways, it is inspirational as well.
For sure.
So, and then you don't have to watch the actual saving of Private Ryan, because that's not as impactful as the first 15 minutes of the film, whereas this, I think, keeps that thread of always being impactful, because even though the characters are there and you do care about them, it's not about the characters, even though you become attached to them. It's about the story.
And that's why there was very little dialogue, and yet it still seemed like such a fast-paced movie, due to the pacing and the cutting and the temporal effects of the film. It was fast, but it was quiet. There was very minimal dialogue. It told the story of what happened there on the beach on those days.
Yeah. So I think it's well deserved for the number 2 spot. All right, and drumroll please. Number 1.
My number 1 is a movie already mentioned on this list, and it is The Shape of Water.
Very nice. My number 1 is also one that has already been mentioned, being Blade Runner 2049.
And I believe mine is also one that has been chosen for my number 1 spot. It is Baby Driver.
All right. So similar to everything Dan has already said, and please refer to our own review of The Shape of Water. But yeah, Shape of Water, it blew me away as a love story. It blew me away as a sci-fi movie. It blew me away as a period piece. Just every single person involved with it had 100% commitment, and it just felt like a true artistic vision. From the man in the suit playing the fish, feeling like an actual creature, to me really caring for Eliza, this woman that never speaks a word, that basically only has her face and her hands to express herself, and just seeing from a different perspective how this sort of thing would be handled, and that sense of mysticism that always exists in Guillermo del Toro movies. It's just, in my opinion, it's the most fun. Maybe fun's not the best word. It's the most I've ever felt in a movie theater this year. So it was very impactful to me, and frankly, granted it is a relatively recent release, I don't think it'll move anywhere in my mind, and I'm sure on rewatches I'll just appreciate it even more. So, yep, my number one is Shape of Water.
And I'm kind of gonna, I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to say I reiterate what Nick said about Blade Runner 2049. I think the only difference for me would be that I only had recently seen the original Blade Runner somewhat recently to have then seen Blade Runner 2049. So I didn't necessarily have obviously I didn't have the 30-year wait, 35-year wait, but I also was very much present of, this was a very interesting detective story. A noir kind of film, and then seeing it again but in a very different light, where you're now searching for something greater than just the criminals that have escaped a planet and they're replicants and they're no good any longer. You're now looking for a resolution that then moves beyond or is more impactful to what does it mean to be a replicant, what does it mean to be human, is there really any difference, and is there perhaps this chosen child that can bridge the gap between us? Like that idea for the story and the whole catalyst for the story beginning was something that I thought was very, very interesting and very impactful, because I don't know, in a lot of ways, and what I think reflecting back, what a lot of the movies that I resonated with this year is like human identity. What does it mean to be human? Is there a value? Like, what is the value that we place upon our identity? And this movie, particularly, having Agent K, having his identity build up and destroyed, and then built up, and he resolves himself by helping the true character of the story, the true chosen one in a sense. It was just very interesting is not the right word. Impactful, the connection that I felt to that. And not because I'm the chosen one, but because it's a very interesting, sure? And I might be actually. I've read the Star Wars books numerous times, but it was just something that I really resonated with, and I thought was extremely important for in the future, and something I will keep coming back to.
Very good. Baby Driver was a fantastic film. Edgar Wright, you did it right. You had all the elements. You had all the elements of the film. You had the love story. You had the music and the editing within this film was perfect. Everything was spot on. The pacing, the action, the cinematography. I mean, it really stole it. And I think just this film did not have a lot of music that really like stood out, and song-wise was like, I know that one, like, maybe as Guardians did, well, the first Guardians did, but I think this film stole that place for this year with just the music playing such a huge role throughout the film. There's just too much to say. I'm getting lost in it. There was one other thing I want to talk about. I think overall it was just, again, like you guys said, for your films, it was very impactful for me. I liked the variety of characters throughout the film. You have old characters, you have young characters. Just brilliant overall.
So I think we can pretty much all agree that 2017 was a very important movie. Not important movie in the grand scheme of things, but definitely important for us, because I do want to take this time to say, this was our first, kind of attempt to create and talk about things that we actually do really, really love and find inspirational and important to our own lives. And that's one of the main reasons that we started this podcast. And I think this selection of movies this year is a great way to start this podcast, and a great way that we can actually finally communicate to, outside of just our friend group, but even ways it makes us to think deeper and more analytical and more investigative into exactly why we like films and movies. And yeah. I think the selection we've had this year was a fantastic way to begin really analyzing what we find most valuable from them.
And if nothing else, it serves as a time capsule of our thoughts.
It's true.
So, yeah,
You hear that 2049, Zach? You're the chosen one. You always knew it. So if you have, any comments about what you guys thought your favorite movie was or anything like that,
Yeah,
please
give
let
us
know.
give us your list. Give us your top 3 or top 5, or hell, if you want to take the time, put it on your top 10, and we'll definitely take a look at it. List any movies you think we should see that we didn't mention. Movies of this year, movies of last year. We'll look into that, and it is much appreciated. Anything else, guys?
2017 was a good year.
2017
was a good year for
17 out of 17s, if I do say so myself.